talking about disclosure right now. I was just talking about how some people in Congress were getting briefed on UFOs.
Oh yeah, that's some interesting stuff.
Hell yeah, it is. So, now what I just read, I thought this was fucking very interesting. Joseph Gradisher, spokesman for the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare, confirming that the brief took place. What kind of fucking title is that?
Very sophisticated.
It just sounds evil. What are they doing? So we see naval officials. He says naval officials did indeed meet with interested congressional members and staffers on Wednesday to provide a classified brief on efforts to understand and identify these threats to the safety and security of our aviators, he said. Follow-up discussions with other interested staffers are scheduled for later today, when that was on the 20th. Navy officials will
Huh.
continue to keep interested congressional members and staff informed, given the classified nature of these discussions. We will not comment on the specific information provided in these Hill briefings, they said. And it says Donald Trump recently confirmed that he was also briefed on reports of Navy pilots spotting unidentified flying objects. So Trump knows.
Ooh, the
Trump is on
boomer
top of it.
knows.
Trump's got it on lockdown.
I really
So,
want to see where it goes, man. This is something I've been very interested in for since I learned about UFOs. Honestly.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, everyone's been talking about disclosure so long, and it's like, I don't think it's actually aliens or whatever they're talking about. It's not aliens or whatever fucking crafts are coming up. These are not aliens. I don't think. I think, and notice that they're not saying aliens. They're not mentioning anything like that at all. But this is like this trickle that's been going on for so long. And, I want to show the video. Are you on Watch Together?
I am currently clicking it right now. Sorry, I had to wrangle my cat's kittens, man. It was it
Cat
was
gang
something
gang.
else.
Cat gang gang.
That gang gang.
All right. So I'm gonna play this fucking video from a Navy jet locking on to an unidentified flying object.
Okay. Oh,
Nickel 6-1 Tango, object on. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's some troubleshooting to the site. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. Look at it fly.
oh.
Yeah. Now that's all there is. Very little detail. However, I
See,
I do
the
think
interesting
it's
thing for
something.
me is, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Like, it's there's lots of UFOs or like craft sightings or all that stuff that has to do with water,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Well, then you're gonna like where I have to go with this. But even more
Ooh.
more interesting, I think on that video in particular. Now you go back and you see the logo in the top corner and fucking what you see is To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. Who is that? Do you know who
Mhm.
that is, Matt? That's
Don't
motherfucking Tom DeLonge and a bunch of feds. That's
no
his thing.
shit.
Yeah, that's his fucking thing. This is the video, and I think he brought this up on Joe Rogan when he was on there. He showed this very video, and this video is from like 2015, so it's not exactly new.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's just fascinating.
Well, it's about to get a lot more fascinating, I think, because I have an excerpt from one of my heroes, Bill Cooper, his book "Behold a Pale Horse," and notice that all of this information is coming out of the Navy.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned water, and now I'm gonna read this, and it's fucking amazing. This is from Bill Cooper's time in the Navy when he was coming up in like before he was in naval intelligence. But he thinks this was one of the reasons that he was like qualified for it because he proved he could keep his fucking mouth shut. Well, he was
hmm
in Vietnam. So I'm not sure exactly what year we're talking here, but it was in the midst of Vietnam, so you can kind of place it in your mind. This is his story. Geronimo and I began the unending task of sweeping the horizon from bow to stern, then from the sky from horizon to zenith, and then back to the horizon from bow to stern, again and again, and then a pause to rest our eyes and chat for a few minutes. I asked Ensign Ball to call for some hot coffee. As he bent over, the 1MC. I turned, raising my binoculars to my eyes just in time to see a huge disk rise from beneath the ocean, water streaming from the air around it, tumble lazily on its axis, and disappear into the clouds. My heart beat wildly. I tried to talk but couldn't. Then I changed my mind and decided I didn't want to say that anyway. I had seen a flying saucer the size of an aircraft carrier come right out of the ocean and fly into the clouds. I looked around quickly to see if anyone else had seen it. Ensign Ball was still bending over the 1MC. He was ordering coffee. Geronimo was looking down the starboard side aft. I don't know these fucking nautical terms or whatever they are. I was torn between my duty to report what I had seen and the knowledge that if I did, no one would believe me. As I looked out over the ocean, I saw only sky, clouds, and water. It was as if nothing had happened. I almost thought I had dreamed it. Ensign Ball straightened, turned towards Geronimo, and said the coffee was on the way up. I looked back toward the spot about 15 degrees relative off the port bow and about 2.5 nautical miles distant. Nothing. Not even a hint of what happened. Ensign Ball, I said, I thought I saw something about 15 degrees relative off the bow, but I lost it. Can you help me look over that area? Ensign Ball turned, raising his glasses to eye level. I didn't know it at the time, but Geronimo had heard me and turned to look. He was happy that something had broken the monotony. I was just lifting the binoculars off my chest when I saw it. The giant saucer shape plunged out of the clouds, tumbled, and, pushing the water before it, opened up a hole in the ocean and disappeared from view. It was incredible. This time I had seen it with my naked eyes, and its size in comparison with the total view was nothing short of astounding. Ensign Ball stood in shock, his binoculars in his hands, his mouth open. Geronimo yelled, "Holy shit! What the... Hey, did you guys see that?" Ensign Ball turned and, looking right at me with the most incredulous look in his face, said in a low voice, "This had to happen on my watch." He turned, quickly pressing the override on the 1MC, and yelled, "Captain to the bridge, Captain to the bridge." As an afterthought, he pressed the switch again and yelled, "Somebody get a camera up here." The captain surged up the ladder with the quartermaster on his heels. Chief Quartermaster Quintero had the ship's 35mm camera slung around his neck. The captain stood patiently while Ensign Ball tried to describe what he had seen. He glanced at us and we both nodded in affirmation. That was enough for the captain. He called sonar, who during the excitement had reported contact underwater at the same bearing. The captain announced into the 1MC, "This is the captain. I have the con." Then reply came back instantly from the helm. "Aye, aye, sir." I knew that the helmsman was passing the word in the control room that the captain had personally taken control of the boat. I also knew that the rumors were probably flying through the vessel. The captain called down and ordered someone to closely monitor the radar. His command was instantly acknowledged. As the five of us stood gazing out over the sea, the same ship, or one exactly like it, rose slowly, turned in the air, tilted at an angle, and then vanished. I saw the chief snapping pictures out of the corner of my eye. This time I had 3 images from which to draw conclusions. It was a metal machine. From that there was no doubt whatsoever. It was intelligently controlled. Of that I was equally sure. It was a dull color, kind of like pewter. There were no lights. There was no glow. I thought I had seen a row of what looked like portholes, but could not be certain. Radar reported contact at the same bearing and gave us a range of 3 nautical miles. The range was right on, as the craft had moved toward the general direction that we were headed. We watched repeatedly as the strange craft re-entered the water and then subsequently rose into the clouds over and over again until finally we knew that it was gone for good. The episode lasted about 10 minutes. Before leaving the bridge, the captain took the camera from the chief and instructed each of us to not talk to anyone about what we had seen. He told us the incident was classified and that we were not to discuss it, not even amongst ourselves. We acknowledged his order. The captain and the chief left the bridge. Ensign Ball stepped to the 1MC and, pressing the override switch, announced, "This is Ensign Ball. The captain has left the bridge. I have the con." The reply, "Aye, aye, sir," was quickly followed. Those of us who had witnessed the UFO were not allowed to go ashore after we had berthed in Pearl. Even those of us who didn't have the duty were told we had to stay aboard. After about 2 hours, the commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence, once again, the Office of Naval Intelligence, boarded. He went directly to the captain's stateroom. It wasn't long before we were called to wait in the passageway outside the captain's door. Ensign Ball was called first. After about 10 minutes, he came out and went into the wardroom. He looked shaken. I was next. When I entered the stateroom, the commander was holding my service records in his hands. He wanted to know why I had gone from the Air Force into the Navy. I told him the whole story, and he laughed when he said that after putting off the Navy for fear of chronic seasickness, I hadn't been seasick yet. Suddenly, a mask dropped over his face, and looking at me directly in the eyes, he asked, "What did you see out there?" "I believe it was a flying saucer, sir," I answered. The man began to visibly shake, and he screamed obscenities at me. He threatened to put me in the brig for the rest of my life. I thought he wasn't going to stop yelling, but as suddenly as he began, he stopped. I was confused. I had answered his question truthfully, yet I was threatened with prison. I was not afraid, but I was not very confident either. I figured I had better take another tack. 18 years with my father and 4 years in the Air Force had taught me something. Number one was that officers just do not lose control like that, ever. Number two was that if my answer had elicited that explosion, then the next thing out of my mouth had better be something entirely different. Number three was that his response had been an act of kindness to get me to arrive at exactly that conclusion. "Let's start all over again," he said. "What did you see out there?" "Nothing, sir," I answered. "I didn't see a damn thing, and I'd like to get out of here just as soon as possible." A smile spread over his face, and the captain looked relieved. "Are you sure, Cooper?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied. "I'm sure." "You're a good sailor, Cooper," he said. "The Navy needs men like you. You'll go far with the Navy." He then asked me to read several pieces of paper that all said the same thing, only with different words. I read that if I had ever talked about what it was that I didn't see, I could be fined up to $10,000 and imprisoned for up to 10 years or both. In addition, I could lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. He asked me to sign a piece of paper stating that I understood the laws and regulations that I had just read governing the safeguard of classified information relating to the national security. By signing, I agreed to never communicate in any manner any information regarding the incident with anyone. I was dismissed, and boy was I glad to get out of there. So he was shot dead by cops on his lawn, probably for all the shit he said like this. He had clearance in naval intelligence, and what I think is so interesting is that all of the reports are saying that's exactly where all this information is coming from.